Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Today we're going to take a look at the full moon in Aries, which, because of its close proximity to both Mars and Pluto, is almost forming a Cardinal Grand Cross, which is a very powerful configuration. And whenever you see a full moon picking up on a configuration like this, you want to pay a little extra attention. So I'm going to also look at the collection of the four cardinal houses and what they look like for all of us, depending on your rising sign. It'll be not, it's not quite horoscopes, but it will be something that should help you when it comes to understanding how all four of these houses are being activated right now in your birth chart. So we'll do a little bit of that today as well. So anyway, as always, before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe. Our next big subscriber push is to try to get to 80,000 subscribers on this channel by the spring equinox. So we made 70,000 by the fall equinox, and we did that really quickly. It was almost a 10,000 subscriber push that we did. It was amazing. So we're going to give ourselves until the spring equinox, which is around March 20th, to get to 80,000. So if you're new to the channel, it's free to subscribe. We appreciate it. It helps grow our business and community. You can find transcripts of any of these daily talks on the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. And two things. Tonight is the my webinar on the astrology of compatibility. So if you go to the events page, click on live talks. This evening from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time, I'm giving a talk called The Myth of Astrological Compatibility, What Everybody Gets Wrong About the Astrology of Relationships. And that talk, if you cannot make it live, you get the webinar link when you register. But if you can't make it live, we'll send you the recording afterward. Next month, I'm doing a talk on Pluto in Aquarius, AI, aliens, and New World Orders. That should be really fun. And then the other thing is, don't forget that the sale on the first year course ends on Friday. We have extended it through the end of this week. The class starts November 16th. Of course, you can still register after this Friday. The sale price will just not be there any longer. But at the bottom, you'll find those sale prices available. After today's video, when I sign off, you will hear an informational video about the course. If you want to listen to it, you can learn more about the program and what this first year class in ancient Hellenistic astrology is all about. It is a fantastic election that we have with Pluto entering Aquarius right as the class starts. And also Uranus trining Pluto upcoming in the year ahead. These signatures are powerful and really nice signatures for studying astrology. So I really do believe that the next couple of cohorts at Nightlight are going to be very special. Anyway, at the bottom, you can find the tuition assistance. So there is need-based tuition. If you're someone who could use a little help making the program happen, we have a sliding scale that we allow people to work within if you have a limited or fixed income or you're experiencing financial hardship. So please do take advantage of that. You can use that all the way up to the start of the program, by the way. That is available all the way up until November 16th when the class starts. So if you have any questions about the program after today's content is done, you'll hear me talking more about it and giving you some ways to contact us with any questions. All right. So on that note, let's turn our attention to the real-time clock. I have some allergies this morning, so I'm a little stuffed up. Okay. Here it is, Thursday, October 17th, and we have a full moon. Let me get this, my epic pen. Where'd you go? Oh, there you are. Okay. All right, so let me get the epic pen out. It disappeared for a second. Here is the full moon coming through. This is early this morning, so you easily could have been feeling the effects of the full moon last night into today. But what I want to highlight about this full moon is the proximity that the full moon has to Pluto and Mars. We have talked already about the Pluto-Mars opposition this week. And you can see here that Mars is forming an opposition to Pluto. And that opposition is going to be intensifying between now and the end of October. And so this full moon is, in a sense, pressing the Pluto-Mars button. We have the full moon in the sign of Mars, with Mars in its fall moving into an opposition with Pluto. So that is a very powerful signature. And I've talked at length earlier this week about Pluto-Mars, so I don't want to reiterate it too much. What I want to say is more about the full moon energy and how it's related to it. So anytime that we have the cardinal axis activated like this, it's not a perfect Grand Cross, so it's not the world's most intense Grand Cross, but the full moon is picking up on the energy of the Pluto-Mars opposition, which is bearing down on us. So um, anytime you have this happening in cardinal signs, or what were originally called tropical signs, and that word tropical, you've probably heard me say this a million times. It comes from the word tropos, which means to turn. And the word tropical, the tropical zodiac, for example, is a zodiac that is oriented through the turning points, the tropical turning points of the solstices and the equinoxes. So each of the cardinal signs is oriented at, like 0 Aries is oriented to the spring equinox, 0 Cancer, the summer solstice, 0 Libra, the fall equinox, and 0 Capricorn, the winter solstice. This is not a causal model. This is a symbolic system. So it works for people no matter what hemisphere they're in, even though the orientation of the symbolic model comes from the northern hemisphere. So I say that all the time, but it's just a reminder. Now, when we look at tropical signs, we're talking about pivotal turning points. So tropical signs are thought of as initiating new activity, usually through acute events that act as they kind of, how can I put it? Well, one image that comes to my mind is the image of a stake put into the ground like a tent stake. And it is a stake that it makes some kind of emphatic statement. And also, it starts to hold something into place. It brings something that otherwise has no bearing or no grounding, and it stakes it in. It says, now this will be real. Now this will be pinned to the board. And another way of thinking, there's many ways of thinking about tropical symbolism, but another one would be that they represent turning points in the stories of our lives. And there's so many stories in our lives. So this will not be, for some people, it will show up in one area of life, and for other people, the turning point may appear in another. But the turning point is tropical in the sense that it's acute, it's sudden, and in the story shifts. And usually that happens with there's a little bit, like if I had to compare it to a planetary quality, I would almost describe cardinal events, especially grand crosses, where you have 4 cardinal signs and planets all activated at once. It's a little Uranian. It has that feeling of being a sudden break from whatever has been done previously. Let me give you an example of this within the modalities. So you think there's 3 modalities. There's cardinal, fixed, and mutable in modern terms. They were traditionally called tropical, solid, and double-bodied. And there's really only 2, tropical and solid. Solid is where things maintain rhythmic, steady, constant expression. And then there's cardinal, which sort of breaks that apart and punctuates and therefore establishes what will be a new pattern that will be consistently held. And so there's newness and there's stability, or you could say there's something, there's change and there's constancy. So change and constancy are like the 2 basic qualities of the zodiacal language. Then you have the double-bodied signs, we call mutable signs, which were called double-bodied because they were said to contain the part of the nature of a cardinal or tropical sign and part of the nature of a solid sign. That's because they come right after a solid sign and right before a tropical sign. So mutable signs represent transitional spaces that lead us from a place of consistency or repeatability or stability or sameness or durability, all fixed words, or constancy, into a space of punctuated change. And the double-bodied signs take place in those times of year when the quality of the light in the solar year is moving from a space that's steady to a place that will represent acute change and a totally new quality that will be introduced and then held and then again dispersed and changed. So that the basic two qualities though are change, which is cardinal, and steadiness or constancy, which is fixed. And then you have the periods where the fixed is diminishing and we're drawing closer into the space of change. So they're like double-bodied signs are like liminal spaces between change and constancy. So when you have a full moon coming off from an eclipse, a solar eclipse, right? And it's configured in a grand cross, nearly a grand cross with Mars opposing Pluto, which is in cardinal signs a dramatic kind of change. These are very these are planetary events that will likely, especially when they touch your chart in sensitive places like a planet or a degree, one of the cardinal degrees or what have you, then you're going to see your life punctuated by dramatic change. There's something new that's being established and it will swivel you or turn you. And all of a sudden now there's a new direction. And so that's the cardinality. We know that Pluto is a planet that also loves to participate in the sudden pent-up release. Like if there's like both Uranus and Pluto have that ability to make those dramatic kind of cardinal turning points in our lives. Part of how they express is cathartic, volcanic, eruptive, purgative, transformative, and that powerful release of pent-up energy. Mars is very cardinal or tropical in the way that Mars often expresses action, assertiveness, force, aggression. The full moon in Aries is in a Mars-ruled sign that is Mars-ruled sign while Mars is opposing Pluto. The eclipse was in maybe the least dramatic, right, of the four right now. Mars in Cancer, Pluto in Capricorn, full moon in Aries. Oh, the sun in Libra. So it's like there's a little less drama with the sun in Libra, perhaps. It's a Venus-ruled sign, and Venus is at this time just about to enter Sagittarius, where thankfully things kind of brighten a little bit. But the main thing here is that we have to be very aware of the fact that this cardinal energy is bringing some very poignant, very sharp, distinct, acute turning points. Pluto Mars does the same thing. So there's an amplification of all of these themes of dramatic, sudden turning points. Now, again, that does not mean that every single human being is going to experience a dramatic, sudden turning point. It just means that those are the symbols in the air, and you are likely, if you do not experience something of a shift yourself that matches with the cardinal symbolism of the Mars-Pluto symbolism, the eclipse symbolism, then you are likely to see someone around you going through it. Because most of what makes it a big deal or not for us has to do with, how it's configured in our birth charts. So if you have, for example, just it can be very mundane too. Like my dad is having a knee replacement surgery, and this will happen under this energy, right? The Mars-Pluto dynamic and so forth. So that's touching a place in his chart close to his ascendant. So of course he's having a physical procedure done on his body. Prayers up for my dad. Hope he'll be okay. So yeah, I mean, there's and obviously, like, well, just use the example of my dad, like a knee surgery, the recovery process is going to be a thing, So to have your knee back, first of all, is a dramatic turning point. To have a surgery is a dramatic turning point. To have to go through some rehabilitation and learn to walk again with a new, knee replacement surgeries, if you've ever known anyone who's had them, they're pretty elaborate. So that kind of event is a good example from someone who has Pluto finishing up basically on his ascendant in Capricorn. So it's like, it doesn't, I don't want people to hear the talk on cardinality or the tropical nature of this full moon and think, oh yeah, like something really bad and acute and sudden is going to happen. No, dramatic turning points can be emotional and internal and psychological. They can take place within relationships. They can happen for people around you, but not necessarily to you. They can be about something shifting dramatically in the workplace. They can be about things that are taking place in the collective that are just also having a big impact on your heart. If you're an empathetic person, it's like, be careful of the news, especially right now. But um, not that, you want to bury your head either, but you get what I'm saying. So, um, the cardinality is a big deal. What I want to do next is I want to open the charts, and I want to show you guys what kinds of house topics get activated when something like this is in the air. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back. Here we go. Oh, I'm so stuffy today. All right. Anyway, let's go to I'm just going to create this like this. So this is the case for all cardinal signs. So if you are an Aries rising, if you are a Cancer rising, if you are a Libra rising, or if you are a Capricorn rising, you will have this full moon and the kind of Grand Cross that it is activating and the Mars Pluto dynamic that is also part of this. You have this all coming across the angular houses. So for those people who are Aries rising, Cancer rising, Libra rising, or Capricorn rising, you could obviously take this into account from a solar horoscope standpoint if you wanted to, but I really think this one in particular is going to be better for your rising sign. These planets are landing in the cardinal houses. Now it'll look a little bit different if I put Cancer rising. Then you have Mars, Pluto across the 1st and 7th, and the moon and sun across the 10th and 4th. And so every cardinal sign is going to shift the planets in the configuration into different houses, but they're all angular. That's the point. So if you had to ask me which signs are going to experience this most intensely, I would say cardinal signs, or we could put it two ways: people who are cardinal signs rising, or people who have planets in the late degrees, especially like 27 to 29 of the cardinal signs. If you have planets in those degree ranges, this is going to hit especially hard because the full moon is building into the Mars Pluto opposition, which happens at those late anaretic degrees. So cardinal signs rising, you have it especially loud in your chart because these angular houses are also thought of as like hubs or centers of power. Planets in these places were said to speak more loudly. So, I mean, that's impressive. So one of the things that I would say here is, in these houses, you have topics like identity and relationships, home and family and work. Those are the big areas of life that most people who come to see astrologers want to talk about. That's why they're angular. That's why they're loud. That's why they're busy. And that's why they're dynamic. And that is why for all of the cardinal signs rising, this configuration, this full moon today, and the coming Mars-Pluto opposition stand to be extra intense. But the same thing would be true, again, if you had planets in late degrees of cardinal signs. So that is first. Let's go ahead and I'm going to move Taurus onto the ascendant, where now we get the entire configuration across the declining houses, or what are sometimes referred to as cadent houses. So these spaces by ancient Greek astrologers were called metakosmio, which means metakosmios, which means like a liminal world, a world between worlds in which the gods are working things out that have yet to be determined, or you could say that it is that they're liminal spaces that aren't quite tethered to Earth. Like, for example, if you think about the 12th house or the 9th house, places often associated with solitude or study and religious or philosophical pursuits. The 6th house, a place that has not yet arrived, that is in a kind of liminal space insofar as it's working on things that are not complete. It's always studying, building or developing craft, maybe slaving away at something without end. So the sixth house has this kind of chop wood, carry water mentality that, it's like there's always a way in which we're doing the dishes in life. It's kind of like the sixth house. But there can be a lot of things that we do in the sixth house that, you know, I would say building and developing skills and abilities through work and practice is also at times a sixth house kind of activity. But you see how in that sense it's in between. It's like when I'm practicing something, I'm not yet at the final product. I'm in this kind of liminal world or space. And so developing things in the sixth house, working on things in the sixth house. The third house is that daily environment and the constant fluctuations and changes of the daily world around us, the environment, the culture, and the day-to-day kinds of things that we do. Each of these places constitutes um, a place that is busy and moving and changing quite often. And in these spaces, there are often the creation and destruction of various paradigms, perceptions, beliefs, thoughts. Um, we deal with things that break apart the monotony um, because they give us pause to learn or study or grow and reflect and say, oh, wow, what was that? Let me reflect on it. Like, for example, if you have a meditation practice, one of the things you're doing with a meditation practice is you're breaking apart the structure and routine of like, everyday life, and you're sitting back to reflect upon it. There's a way in which we busy ourselves working. And insofar as we get like occupied with things that take us uh, into other little worlds, like when I sit down to make my content for the day and I go through my whole creative process, or when I just take time to be quiet. Sometimes I just go for a walk by myself, kind of a 12th house activity, or sometimes we need to busy ourselves by going to the Target or the grocery store or something, very third house. Anyway, the point is that these spaces are transitional kinds of spaces, and they often allow us to reflect upon life and think about life, meditate on life, and fine tune our sense of direction and purpose. So when I think about everything that's happening for the fixed signs right now, the fixed signs, I really think about things happening in the world and environment around you mentally, intellectually, philosophically, emotionally, energetically. What kinds of things are you having to work around or work through? How are things shifting the way you see the world? And also, it's very common for these kinds of transits in these kinds of houses to be about things happening around you to other people. So you may be affected by things that are affecting others more dramatically, especially at the end of the month. And then, okay, let's just go to the mutable signs, which then places all four of these planets into the succedent houses, or sometimes called post-ascensional houses. So now we have 11, 8, 5, and 2. All of these houses were considered developmental houses by ancient astrologers because they were in the process by the diurnal motion of the sky of rising into the angle next. So if you were to keep the clock ticking right now and continue on by an hour or so, the moon in Aries would rise into the 10th next. Pluto in Capricorn would set into the 7th next. The sun in Libra in the 5th would move into the 4th next. And Mars in the 2nd would move into the 1st next. So each of those planets is moving into an angle in time. This, broadly speaking, would mean that things are happening that are gathering momentum, and that the kinds of things you're going to likely experience are going to be things that don't blossom for a little bit. They're in the process of building and developing assets, resources being gathered, things that are building towards something that will keep growing from this point forward. But significant turning points in terms of the things that are in process in your life, like longer term processes or things that you're waiting for, things that are developing, and shifts or changes that are sort of helping a process along. That is the best way of thinking broadly about four planets in these houses. Give it a little time. I would say, watch how things shift For example, in the new year, when the nodes are going to be moving into the double-bodied signs, and then you have angularity taking place with the nodes for all of the double-bodied signs, that would be a nice place to start to see things that are developing right now starting to come into fruition, say February, March, things like that. Anyway, these are just some kind of broad ways of thinking about where the planets are landing, all four planets landing in four houses, and just some ideas that can help you piece together what that means to have, a full moon that's configured with something of a grand cross. So I hope this has been useful and that you learn a little something about astrology every time we talk. One of the things that I would also watch for, given the full moon in Aries, Mars in Cancer, Mars going into the opposition with Pluto, facing or confronting things emotionally or with family members, dealing with a little bit of family drama, family karma. There is also maybe a way in which we have to be careful of emotional reactivity and a kind of emotional volatility that's in the air around this full moon. A full moon is always amplifying the power of the moon. And then when it's in the sign of Mars and Mars is in the sign of the moon, you have mutual reception between the moon and Mars. So the potential for a constructive use of emotional energy is there. But so too would be a tendency to have kind of a fast trigger emotionally. So you're going to be a little bit careful of that right now. All right. Anyway, that's it for today. I wanted to let you guys know that tomorrow I am going to be doing a live stream in place of normal content. Thought I would do a live stream to just do some Q&A as a way of saying thank you to everybody for all of your help and reaching the 70,000 subscriber mark. So I'm going to, tomorrow morning, I will come on. I'll tell you a little bit about the upcoming program, and I will do a live Q&A. And I believe I'm going to be live probably, probably just a little after 8 a.m. Central Time, 9 a.m. Eastern. So you can look for the live stream on my channel tomorrow around 8 a.m. Central, 9 a.m. Eastern. That'll be about the time that I log in, and I'll probably spend an hour or so taking your questions and just hanging out with you guys. And also, I'll tell you a little bit about the upcoming program, and then, whatever questions you guys want to bring to me about current astrological events or anything else, I'll be open, and it'll be good. It'll be good to hang out with you guys. Okay, so I will see you all tomorrow morning for that. And otherwise, I hope you have a great day. Bye. Hey, everyone. I'm glad that you're sticking around to hear more about the Year 1 program that's coming up. The program starts on November 16th of this fall, and I am here today to tell you all that the program includes and why I think you really like it if you're thinking about studying astrology. So a few practical details about the course as well. The class begins November 16th, as I mentioned, but it takes place on Saturdays from 12 to about 2 or 3 p.m. Eastern Time. So that's 11 to 2 Central, and typically classes are about 2 hours long. Sometimes they run over with Q&A and discussion, but you can always plan for about 2 hours and you won't miss any of the actual lecture content for the day. You may have to duck out a little early if Q&A or discussion is extending. Sometimes it does, which is why we say between 2 and 3 hours, but typically it's around 2. All of the classes are recorded, so if you can't attend live, you are more than welcome to watch the recordings at your own pace and on your own time. You have lifetime access to the recordings, and everything is housed on a student website. I want to actually give you a just a little preview of what that student website looks like. So I am going to open up my own version of Thinkific, which is the platform that we use. So here's are some of my courses. These are all the Nightlight courses I teach. You can see on the page. But I'm going to tune into, let's go to Nightlight 28, which is the section that began in June of 2024. So here you're going to see that we have orientation instructions, course information, class links, and calendar. Everything that you need to know how to access the course is there, and you'll have a version of this in your own panel that you get set up with when you enroll. And then our lessons are laid out. So lesson 1, we have the video, the audio, the slides, the transcript. We have the Q&A box transcript so you can see what people were saying in the chat box during class. We have flashcards. We have a workbook. We have planet and sign glyph flashcards. We have bonus material, videos that we like from YouTube that we link you to. Say, check this video out, check that video out. They go along with some of the things we talked about in class. So every lesson has material for you to go as far as you want with, but the main thing is the video, audio, slides, transcript, etc. are all listed there so that you can download and watch it on your own time if you can't attend live. Again, the live classes do happen on Saturdays for this cohort, starting November 16th. That is our first day of class. And then going forward, it always meets on Saturdays, and we give you the class schedule to map out. And the breaks that we have, the study sessions that we have, everything's mapped out on the class calendar for you. So those are just a few practical details that, just to kind of start us off with. So I'm going to take you over to the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. And I'm going to share with you some information about the program and sort of walk you through what it includes and what you can expect. So it is an almost year-long program. We typically finish between 10 and 11 months out of the year. It can depend a little bit on some of my teaching and scheduling, because sometimes I teach at conferences and it may delay some of our modules by a week or something like that. But it's typically around 10 to 11 months that the program lasts. So we call it our first year program. At Nightlight, we have a program for absolute beginners. You may want to check that out if you are like brand spanking new. That would be 8 to 10 hours of content that's really meant to set you up for the first year course. We sort of assume that if you're coming into the first year program, you already know a little bit about astrology. For example, you have some familiarity with the signs, planets, and houses. Maybe you know what aspects are, but you want to learn more about what they are. But if you are really at the very total entry level space, then try Astrology for Beginners. And when you take that, you could do that right away and then join the first year course in November, and you'd be perfectly set up for it. But anyhow, in this program, over the course of about a year, we work through 30 lessons that I lead. And those lessons are all 2 to 3 hours each, including lecture, a little break, and a Q&A portion where we open up for people to come on mic and camera and ask questions and have an interactive discussion about the material for the day. The program is broken into modules that cover a variety of topics in ancient Hellenistic astrology. That is the earliest era of horoscopic astrology. And so if you don't know a lot about the different schools of astrology, Hellenistic astrology is going to be the kind of astrology that you see a lot of astrologers practicing nowadays. It's become more popular in the last 30 years or so. And that is due to the fact that a lot of ancient texts with some of the original techniques of horoscopic astrologers were recently translated into the English language, and it's created this renaissance in terms of the use of ancient approaches to astrology. I have a background in modern psychological, archetypal, and evolutionary astrology, and so of course I bring those things to the table, but the course is primarily focused on the excavation of ancient techniques and the spiritual philosophy that ancient astrologers also espoused. The closest thing that I can tell you to what that looks like is, ask this question: do you resonate with the philosophy that you hear me take on my YouTube channel? If so, then you're going to love this course in terms of its philosophical and spiritual approach, because the spiritual approach to astrology that I teach is really at the heart of the program. And that's a big part of my life. I approach astrology from a spiritual standpoint. It doesn't belong to one religion or one particular school of thought, but you will hear me talking about things like the soul, the belief in the transmigration of the soul. You'll hear me talk about the need to be soul-centered in our client approach to counseling in astrology. You'll hear me have an appreciation for psychological dimensions of astrology, but also ancient astrology is really very, very good at developing your predictive capacity. We talk about what kinds of predictions are appropriate, how to make appropriate predictions, how to be the right kind of astrologer for our clients without inducing any fear. So there's a lot of care that goes into the development of this craft. But ancient astrology is really amazing when it comes to honing your predictive abilities. And then what you'll find is in this program, there's also a pretty significant emphasis on the psychological dimensions and client care. Anyhow, we go into the roots of ancient Hellenistic astrology and its techniques in this program, and the 30 classes are broken into modules. We work through the history and philosophy. We work through planets, houses, signs, aspects, essential and accidental dignities. And then we get into approaches to the delineation of natal charts. And then at the end of the program, almost a third of the program is dedicated to live client readings, where you're going to see me meet with a person and apply what we've been studying for an hour-long reading. We take a break, we come back, and then we workshop. How did I do that? Why did I make these choices? How did I handle this or that came up in the reading? And it becomes easily the favorite part for most students of the entire program, because by that point, you've got so much theory that you're really ready to see it put into action. We alternate those live client practice sessions with hands-on practice, where students get to bring chart questions into class that we work on. And that's also something that most people really love. A lot of people will look at the curriculum and say, well, I already know planets, houses, and signs and aspects and dignities. But not if you haven't studied Hellenistic astrology, because the approach that ancient astrologers had to these topics is vastly different from the approach that modern astrologers take. So you will be, in a sense, relearning basic things in a brand new way. And I think a much more enriching, deep, and philosophically clear way. It's really nice to know the why behind things. This program and Hellenistic astrology in general is very good at helping you understand the why behind everything that we do. Also, it's really important to participate when you study astrology in a living lineage. So one of the reasons I don't let people jump ahead to my second or third year programs is because I want you to be entrained to a lineage, a particular way of doing things that comes from an astrologer who has a very living, busy, active practice and who has had teachers themselves. I think that's important for astrological learning. That's the model that my own learning take, and so that's what I really want students to take away from my programs. Anyhow, so all of that aside, the second year program focuses, after we build our understanding of the basic delineation techniques of birth charts, in year 2, we move into timing techniques, which is all about when the karma of a birth chart is going to be active and expressing itself throughout the course of a lifetime. That's year 2. Year 3 focuses on the development of counseling skills at a much deeper level. And then we also have a 1-year horary program, which is about the development of a very specific predictive technique that can be a really amazing tool to add to your kit. That is 4 years worth of training programs that we have. However, I want to mention that many people take our classes just for the sake, purely for the sake of their own personal growth. Taking these programs is very much like being taught how to utilize a technology that for yourself will be deeply useful for the rest of your life, and maybe for close friends or family members around you. Many people come through our programs taking that benefit away. We'll study through all 4 years of our programs with no intention of being professional. This is their hobby. This is a spiritual tool that will have it will pay dividends over a long period of time. However, many people without the intention to practice come into our courses and discover that they're actually good at it and may end up reading for other people part-time. And then there are students who are deeply, intensely motivated to practice for other people. And it is not that our programs really make those people successful. Our programs contribute to your development, but it really is that some people have a calling to practice professionally. And these programs are designed to give you all the tools you need to develop that confidence and to develop a really coherent set of tools and to entrain yourself to a lineage, which you can also develop your own unique style out of. So those are some of the kinds of people that take our programs, you might say. So the 30 classes on the year are then broken into modules. And in between modules, we have 2 course directors who are present in all of the classes, and they lead breakout tutoring sessions where you can come in and review or ask questions about the module that we've just completed, which is usually anywhere between 2 and 3 classes each. So those breakout study sessions led by our tutors are outside of the 30 classes and very useful. A lot of people like to attend those because they also offer opportunity for community and just lively conversation. We also have 12 online webinar classes led by guest teachers that we host throughout the year. Those are free, and if you can't make them live, they're all uploaded into your student folder. You also have an interactive group forum discussion staffed with tutors who typically respond to questions that you have about the material within 24 hours. So if you can't attend a tutoring session or you just have a random question on a Tuesday night, you can pop it in there and you'll get an answer. We also have a ton of bonus material, optional quizzes, flashcards, tons of supplemental material that is there to help people go as deeply as they want. We have a reading list that is expansive. And that reading list, we don't expect anyone to accomplish. It's more so a resource that we give you saying, here, if you want to know all the things I've read, if you want to know all the things that I love, if you want to know all the things I recommend, here's a master list of everything for each lesson. You could go, PhD level if you wanted to and read thousands and thousands of pages, or you might find that there's just one extra book that looks really interesting and you want to pick it up. But we pride ourselves on making sure you have a ton of resources. You have lifetime access to all the class recordings. You can email our staff or me throughout the year with questions, and my staff will also defer to me in the case that they don't know the answer to a question. So that is what the program includes. It starts November 16th. If you would like to join, at the bottom between now and October 15th, our early bird payments are available. So that saves you some money off the cost of the course. There is a 12-month installment plan that is cheaper than our normal plan, a one-time payment that's significantly cheaper than our normal one-time payment. So you get these little sales that we do until October 15th. We also have need-based tuition assistance. So if you are someone who would like to take this program, but you are on a fixed or tight budget, we have an application there. Click apply now. Just tell us what you need. We give a range. We say between this dollar amount and this dollar amount, what can you spend? And then we set you up with a plan for that tuition number per month. And that is available for anyone. We ask people to apply early because those spots are limited, but we are really accommodating. We try to make sure that nobody's priced out of a spiritual education. Like, this topic should be very accessible for people because I believe that the divine is speaking through the sky, and like anyone should have access to understanding what it's saying, right? So anyway, that is a bit about the program. I hope that this has been useful for you. If there are any questions you have, you can look over the curriculum content on the page, on the year one page. There's more information there. Check out the FAQ section for more questions. Email us info@nightlightastrology.com. And I hope to see some of you in class soon. I think this is going to be a really powerful program because it's also starting right as Pluto's moving into Aquarius. And within the year, we're going to have a Uranus-Pluto trine with Uranus in Gemini. These Aries signatures and the connection between Uranus and Pluto make for a very powerful year to advance our understanding of astrology. So it's a great election year for studying. And I hope to see some of you in class soon.